Hey guys, just another quick video here. We're going to talk about the motors this time. We're going to do a bit of a tech talk, a bit of a deep dive into the motors, our experience over the last 2 years, why we've gone with this type of design, and yeah, I think we'll start with that. So we're 2 years into this thing. There's motors out there now that are going on 3 years old that are still running.
Nearly,
We just wanted to dive into,
I think it's getting to that point where there's enough of these things out there. There's people that have got a wide range of understanding and mechanical knowledge, right down to very little. So we thought, we're getting to that point now. Let's explain a bit more about the thing that makes it all happen. So these are the motors. We have had a lot of experience over the last 2.5 years of these motors being used all over the world. We've quite literally got people using them in pristine, beautiful freshwater lakes, into Australia where people are riding around in high and low salt content, salty water. There's people in Oman and Dubai riding in like 40-degree temperature salt water, which is like a really nasty environment for ferrous materials.
as well as just different locations too, like a lot of people just ride in beach breaks and they're coming in and out of a beach break all the time with shore dump. There's lots of sand. There's lots of different types of sand. There's the guys in Sydney, in Collaroy, there's really coarse, quite rough sand in a shore dump environment. And we've even found there's metallic sort of sand and grit and stuff that sticks to the magnets inside the motors. So I think just that location difference too, people in river mouths with lots of sticks and debris and floodwaters coming out and they're foiling through that sort of stuff.
Even just clay, tacky mud that some people have.
In lakes and all that kind of stuff.
So we've seen a lot, we've experienced a lot now. These things take years to transpire. So the experience level is just constantly getting bigger, and we're doing everything we can to improve the product, but also the knowledge around the product so people can keep their gear running in good condition and avoid service-related issues that are preventable, and also improve the servicing you can do on your own gear to make sure they can run for many years. Because let's face it, we're not going to beat around the bush here. We're running electronics and ferrous metals in salt water primarily for years, in and out, in and out, in and out. And all you guys and girls out there who have foil gear know even just a bolt put in a mast, unattended to and not cared for, doesn't like it. And if you leave it too long, you're not going to get that sucker out.
And we've got to consider this gear like any marine toy that needs cleaning, needs maintenance, needs servicing, like a jet ski, like an outboard motor, like anything that goes in the salt water. It's a harsh environment. Any boaties out there would know full well what we're talking about, that the ocean will try and kill everything that's put inside it. So that's not meant to be there. So,
and we have boats too.
Exactly.
And it always amazes us just how many parts we have to constantly replace every year or bi-yearly. And these are fully marinized parts that even then just can't cope with Mother Nature. So moving on, why is the motor designed the way it is? So
something we've never gone into and thought we really should give the background, give the context to people, because we don't just pick a random part and just throw it out in the world and go, let's use that. These are well thought out and well considered.
And we have had the question numerous times, and at those times it hasn't been on our top priority to go and tell the world how we've done what we've done. But it's time
The time has come.
give you a bit of an explanation. So, why have we made what we've made? So, the critical component for us is keep the weight as low as possible. I'm not talking like try and keep it light. I'm talking keeping it as low as possible. That's why people like four-wheel drive. It's super lightweight, yet very powerful for its weight. If you take into consideration this motor can fit in the palm of my hand, it's like a small apple, yet it has enough power to lift me at nearly 100 kilos up out of the water and slingshot me onto a wave with a lot of authority, and we can e-foil it around. So don't underestimate just how potent this little guy can be, and it only works because of the design that we've put into it. It's not possible to make a motor this small, this powerful, doing it the conventional way. So I think most people are familiar with an e-foil. They generally have pretty large, long, elongated motors that are sealed, and they've got seals and bearings and all sorts of other
Gearboxes.
stuff. Gearboxes. lots of other stuff to make it possible to get the torque needed to spin a big prop in a small package.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cost associated with that. There's maintenance associated with that, typically maintenance that the user can't do. And there's size and weight. So all of those factors detract from performance long term in certain aspects. So we've tried once again to make the most powerful, smallest, lightest thing we can, and it has its own servicing attributes that you need to take into consideration. So
it's a good moment to just plug as well the podcast that you and I did. That's nearly 2 hours of us talking about why the whole foil drive is designed the way it is, and that size and weight and all that kind of stuff. So that gives even further context to this whole discussion about size and weight of these motors. Comes into the bigger conversation that I guess you and I covered really well with Sykesy.
Yeah, it's true.
Talking about that. So yeah, an outrunner design is effectively what we're talking about here, whether it's an outer spinning rotor that goes around the stator itself. This is a completely different motor design to what Paul was talking about with...
where everything's internal.
Yeah, an internal in-runner with gearboxes that has to be fully sealed. So an outrunner design is obviously an open design motor where water can get inside the motor housing. A lot of people, when they first get their gear or we see them down the beach or whatever, they realise that the motor's actually open and water gets in. That is correct.
To be like that.
Exactly.
So don't worry. Don't email us saying, well, there's water in the motor. It's okay. As Ben just said, this is the rotor and this is the stator. The stator is the thing that has all the copper windings in it, where the electrons run through, they go through the copper windings, and then that electromagnetic field interacts with the magnets in the rotor. The rotor is the thing that spins. So when you put the two together, clunk, it becomes one unit and it can spin. So in the rotor there is the magnets, which is probably a little hard to see on camera because it's black on black on black. And then you've got your stainless steel shaft. We have also made the very important decision they're more expensive, but it's worth its weight in gold, to run 100% ceramic ball bearings. Not stainless steel bearing or not a waterproof bearing, a ceramic bearing. This cannot corrode. It doesn't corrode at all. So,
and they're very high wearing too.
Yeah.
Like they don't wear. Yeah.
Incredibly tough. This handles silt and crap and stuff going through its races where metal would wear quicker than this stuff. So we did that so that you never have to worry about your bearings not spinning. They can get salt and grit in them, but they can also be easily washed out because they're an open race.
Yeah. Stainless steel
shaft
running through a ceramic bearing.
And then we've got all aluminium components that are anodized. So an anodized aluminium element doesn't corrode unless you scratch the anodizing off. So it really leaves us down to one of the main purposes of this video is talking about maintenance of your rotor steel element, which is the outer jacket. So this part here, where the magnets stick to, is made out of steel. I've had a lot of questions about why can't you make it out of plastic, or why can't you make it out of something that isn't prone to getting a bit of surface rust or corrosion. You have to have a steel outer jacket with magnets to make that magnetic field as strong as possible. So it really is just...
Which is where the torque comes from, to use such a small motor, keep the weight down and keep the cost down.
So it has to be like that. The downside of that is if you don't maintain or care for it, over time...
Like any marine toy.
you can develop surface corrosion. And that's not the end of the world. It looks bad, but it's not necessarily the end of the world. It's just you don't want to have it. Nothing wants to corrode. I don't want corrosion on my car when I keep backing it into the water to launch a jet ski, but if I was subjected to salt water, I need to wash the car really thoroughly, otherwise those metal parts are going to corrode. So what we're going to go through today is, as of 2023 going forward, how would you maintain your gear with the new way of doing it? And if you've already got a foil drive, don't stress. There are ways that we can help you not reverse engineer, but take off the clip and make this removable like all new motors. So when I say removable, if you put it on, So normally you can't take the rotor off. Now we've taken the circlip off. It's a little awkward on a table. The whole rotor can come off. Again, we're going to show you that on an actual board, not strapped to a table. So I think that covers sort of how the motor's made.
I think the only last things we should...
epoxy coating, actually.
Yeah, the last things we should cover is, as Paul was talking about, these stators have all the windings and all that kind of stuff in there. We obviously really want to protect this, so this is all epoxy impregnated, both top and bottom and around the circumference as well as all these magnets and the rotor can itself epoxy coated on all of those surfaces inside. There's obviously the electroplated paint on the outside of the can, and another thing that a lot of people don't realise is the sticker is also a protection mechanism. Yes, it looks nice. Yes, it has 4Wheel Drive logo and some basic warnings, but it is also a protection mechanism. So keeping a good quality sticker on the can is going to protect the paint. The paint also protects the steel. So we're going to have separate videos on refurbishment of these motor cans and of the stator if there is any damage. Again, with a spinning design, many different environments and locations. Guys and girls foiling in rivers with lots of stickers and debris and seaweed and shells and turtles and all sorts of stuff going on. These stickers can get a bit torn up and ripped up because it is a spinning surface through the water. But that's, again, why we make all these parts available, and that's something else we're going to cover as well, that these can be replacement parts. We're going to subsidise the cost of these parts to make them as cheap and easy and keep these motors in the water. We've always had an ethos of repairing and replacing stuff rather than just saying you need a whole new
and
component.
keeping it cost effective.
Cost effective,
which
for
is
sure.
a good point to lead into. There are a lot of other brands out there in the world that have some sort of motor related to a foil, typically e-foils. For good reason, they have servicing intervals. So you buy your $10,000 to $20,000 e-foil, it needs to be serviced at some point in time. Gearboxes need greasing, anodes need to be replacing,
Seals
need to be replaced. All this, it's just general maintenance. Now, a lot of those, well, we can't talk for all of them because we're not involved with them, but there are servicing maintenance requirements, time schedules, certain amount of hours you can use on some of them before they need to go in. They need to go to a dedicated service agent. You got to book it in. You got to get your gear there somehow.
Send these massive things back.
Goes on and on and on. And one of the reasons we did what we did is that how can we make this so that you don't have to send it to some super specialist to have it maintained? Can you do it yourself on an island or on a boat or in a van? Yes. And that's why we're going to make, we haven't even had to do it yet, but 2.5 years rolling into 3 years, there's going to be people that might want to replace their rotors because they haven't done good maintenance or they can't be bothered furbishing stuff. Like they just say slide on a new thing. So we're going to make these a subsidised part, really cost effective. If you literally want to upgrade it or change it out, you just pull one off, put the next one on, keep going. This part will be significantly cheaper than any conventional normal service would be anyway. And it's really the only part you technically need to service over many years of use. The rest of the system can continue to run. So again, we're being completely upfront and honest about what's involved and how it needs to be handled. And we've changed the way that you can service these things to make it easier and more obtainable to the average person to try and keep their gear in the best nick. And one thing we did miss is that we've learnt something over the last few years, which is ingress of parts that shouldn't be there. And one of the main things in Australia is we have a lot of mining, a lot of iron ore export. So some of our beaches can end up literally littered with tiny particles of iron oxide and iron ore from these huge ships that go all over the world. And they can sometimes get stuck to the magnets on the inside of here as you're going through the water and swilling around in the ocean. And then you put your system on the shelf and you don't use it for months. Those tiny little bits of exposed iron ore that've got no coatings, no protection, no nothing, they are the bits that are actually sometimes corroding, and you come back, go get your motor and use it, and it doesn't turn. Last time you used it, span perfectly fine. That's something in only the last sort of 3 to 4 months that has really sort of We've seen a few cases of that.
Yeah.
And it's not until we get it back and pull it apart and have the access to do that, we've found, okay, this is something that's not part of the actual unit, it's an external environmental factor. What can we do about that? What can a customer do about that, prevent that from happening? And it's remove the cam.
Yeah.
Oh, geez, there's a chunk in there. Put your finger in there, pull it out, take it out, problem solved. And even things like fishing line.
We've had a few cases of fishing line, yeah. for
Downwinding
sure.
and they go through someone's cut a line and it's just floating through the ocean and ties up around your thing. Or e-foils have the same thing. Like they get, you'll be able to in the ocean literally just pull your rotor off, unwind it, put it back on, keep going.
Yeah.
So crazy things like that you'd never perceive or think about when you're launching something. So anyway,
So some of the little things we've done, we're going to go into further how we've removed the circlips from all the motors going into 2023. If you've got a four-wheel drive already and you want to remove the circlip, we're going to have separate videos on how to do that and, having a look at your motor and seeing what state it's at this current point in time and moving on from there. We've also going to start using this WD-40 lanolin product, which is a corrosion inhibitor and a protective coating on top of all of these other things we've spoken about. So from factory, there's going to be a light misting of a lanolin coating inside the motor and around the stator, as well as we're using a lithium-based marine grease on the actual stainless steel shaft itself to help this slide in and out of the bearings really easy. Because if these do get dry, it does make it quite difficult to pull the rotor on and off through the bearing sometimes. So that's some of the things we're going to be doing from factory and shipping in 2023. And we highly recommend you purchase some of this locally or off Amazon or somewhere like that. And this is going to be part of the maintenance and servicing. Again, washing and cleaning the gear and keeping it fresh is the best way. It's the age-old saying of preventative maintenance rather than replacement is always better. Keeping all this gear in really good nick is, it is your responsibility
at the end of the day. And it's also our responsibility to make that as easy as we can.
Yeah.
So, some people would say, why didn't you make the rotors removable from day one? Well, you don't know everything from day one. It takes experience. We didn't know about particulates in the sand. We're going to get stuck in things. It is what it is. We're doing what we can to make it as easy for everyone. I'll just add, this is a product that should be globally available pretty much. I mean, it's a very well-known brand. Something similar, if you really desperately can't find it, should suffice. If you don't know, you can always reach out. But just to clarify, what this actually does, it puts a coating on a surface that prevents oxygen from touching a metal. Rust cannot happen if there's a oxygen barrier separator. So no oxygen can touch your metal stuff, it won't rust. If it can rust. So that's what this does. It just helps put a barrier on it. You don't need to drench the part in, just a light misting on it. Just gives a coating and then it separates the two. This will help just sustain it for every use, gives it that barrier. But again, as Ben said, flush it, wash it, just get the salt out. That's all you got to do. It's the same with the bolts in your aluminium masts. You really should take them out after every use, re-grease them, put them back in, they'll never seize.
And I think that's a good
point. How many
point.
people do that? Not that many.
I think that's a good point too, is we're learning over time that there's various different aptitudes of people too. Some people just, they don't wash their gear, they don't have time, they can't be bothered. They're going to use it again. We've got guys now that are using their four-wheel drives 3 times a day. They live on their island and the board never really makes it higher than the high tide mark because they...
You know who you are.
You guys know who you are. You drag it out of the water, put it on the high tide mark, put your battery on charge, and then you're back out there in a couple of hours once you've had a rest and you're back into it. So we know that there's people of every aptitude from that's probably the worst case scenario if you're talking about gear maintenance and longevity and looking after it and servicing. And then we've got other people that are absolutely meticulous and their gear is basically spotless. We've had everything come back to us over the last 2 years, everywhere in between for various different reasons. And we're just trying to, provide solutions and provide advice to people at all various different levels. If you're the guy that he uses his gear 3 times a week and he'd rather or 3 times a day, sorry, and would rather just replace this part after X period of time because he hasn't looked after it, and he'll just get another one and just put it on and keep going, then, you know, we're not going to recommend you do that, but that is something that we're going to provide a solution for, down to the person who's like, yeah, I rinse out my gear every session and I give it an okay bath. I sort of spray it down, and I'm going to pull the motor off and squirt some water in here and squirt some water in there, and then throw this in the car. Then that's a second level, and then the fully meticulous person who pulls everything apart, gets every grain of sand out of it, and completely refreshes all the lubricants and sealants and all that kind of stuff every session. We're trying to provide a solution for everyone. We're trying to be realistic. We know that everyone's not going to be meticulous, but we also hope that everyone's not going to be careless, and trying to provide something for everyone as well. Which is a realistic approach.
Exactly. So I hope that all makes sense. We don't want to waffle on too much more. We're going to show you how we would actually wash a system after use on literally one of my boards, just so that there's no room for misinterpretation or whatever, and we can just show you this is how you do it. And it is easier than getting it in a bucket and trying to run it around. For sure. We understand that managing boards and masts, that sort of stuff is tricky. So anyway, hopefully that wasn't too laborious. We're here if you need to talk to us. Our staff are here to answer emails. But again, please watch the information, look at the information, digest it. And if you need further help, do reach out. And as we said, we'll have a completely separate video for anyone that wants to do servicing and maintenance and touch-ups on whatever.
For existing customers.
It's not a platform to do it all in one video. And there'll be some servicing kits available too soon, which allows you to easily get these two parts apart if you've never taken them apart before. And a few little, just making it simple, provide little bits and pieces that you can just do simple maintenance, touch it up, and get it back in the water. All right, so you've just finished using your foil drive, which is the most important thing, having fun on it. Now we just got to wash it and maintain it. So this motor is installed on our integrated mast system. It's exactly the same process if you have the different pod with the external cable. You want to grab the spinning part, which is the rotor, hand on the mast, and try and pull it as straight as you can so that it comes off. If you're pulling it with any sort of angle of attack, it won't come off because it's just too aggressive and tight. You need to pull it nice and straight. So now you've got the stator and the rotor apart. You want to wash your gear down. So just with a basic hose, fresh water rinse. I'm going to rinse inside the rotor. And I'm also just going to check inside here to make sure that there's no debris, like metallic bits of metal or anything that's sticking to the magnets. You just want to make sure, run your finger around on the inside. Yep, smooth as silk. I've washed it out with fresh water. For the sake of a video, I'm not going to sit here doing it for ages, but you might want to wash that out for a good minute. And then the actual stator, same thing. Wash the outside in the bearing hole, up and underneath. Wash my pod. But again, give it a good rinse. Fresh water. Be a bit more methodical when you're doing it, but for video, we're just trying to speed it up a bit. We've got the WD-40 protecting sealant. Before you spray that on, you want to get any old rag or towel or whatever, and we want to dry each component off. So we're drying the stator here, which is the thing in the middle. Again, now this is black, painted, epoxy coated, solid thing. It doesn't spin. You will over time start to see little scratches and little nicks and bits and pieces. That's okay. But we want to dry it, get it nice and dry with this towel. Same for the rotor. I want to dry the outside quickly. Dry the blades. And on the inside is the most important part. You want to get the rag in here and just go around like that. That gets the water out from the inside where the magnets are. So that's nice and dry. Now for the preventative maintenance, with this WD-40 lanolin stuff, I just give it helps to put the towel here so you don't spray all over your board. Just give it a little on the stator. That's it. That's all you need. You don't need much. And for the rotor, I just give it a little spray on the shaft. And just a little touch up on the magnets. That's it. You don't need a huge amount. It's just to give it a little thin coating. I would then leave these two parts separate. I normally put this back in my beer stubby holder because it's nice and foam and protective. But again, just leave them somewhere place to dry. You can put it back together if you want for storage and it's easy to move around with. It's up to you. The fact that you've washed it and put your protective coatings on it is 99% of the battle. I personally, when I'm traveling, I put the rotor back on because I know where it is, I'm not going to lose it, but it would be best to just let them both sit there and dry. And that's it. If you do that, you'll be sweet for many, many, many years of use and your system will appreciate it. So have fun, treat your gear with respect.